This video is sponsored by Tabletop Stronghold. Why, Sean, what big boxes you've got.
The better to kill your tanks with, my dear.
We are finishing up our Emperor's Children / Kroot armies, our new armies. They don't feel that new anymore, it's been over a year, but we're almost done. I've got 2 big projects to complete, and then I got a couple of little things, like literally little things. I got Kroot hounds.
I've got to finish these Mauler fiends / Forge fiends, and then once I'm done with that, I'll be over 2,000 points, and I'll be all done.
Now, I've read your codex. You cannot take Forge Fiends.
No, I can't, but I'm going to build them as both anyway, just in case.
I also want to get more than just Hammerhead gunships out of these. I also want them to be Skyrays as well when I need them to be. So these projects are going to involve some magnets. I've never put together one of these before, but I have a feeling it's going to be easy to magnetize. I have put together and magnetized a Forge Fiend before. It's a pain in the butt.
Yay.
These 2 tanks are both anti-tank tanks, and they are old. The base kit, the Devilfish Transport, is from 2001, and honestly, I feel like it holds up really well. Clipping the sprues, they definitely feel old, with just a few parts per sprue. A modern kit would have almost all of this on one sprue. The fit and finish was a little lackluster, with a fair bit of mold lines to be removed. And funnily enough, the back door can open and close with friction, letting you get a peek inside. I don't really care about this though, so I'm just gonna go ahead and glue it shut. As I was getting more of the parts put together, the lines and seams were getting egregious, so I used some Tamiya Basic Putty to fix some of these gaps. Putting together the body panels, these tanks are much bigger than I thought. Toughness 10 with a 3-up save, I thought they'd be more like Tau Rhinos, but they're closer in size to the Land Raider. After I got these body panels put together, I found even more ugly seams that needed putty filling. And the engines were atrocious, with the 2 halves barely lining up. I had to break out actual 220 grit sandpaper to work these down into smooth surfaces and recarve the grooves. Then I fully puttied the seams with lots of sanding to get the job done. It's a lot of work to make the seams disappear, but I think it'll be worth it.
Opening my boxes, these kits are pretty modern from when Chaos was switching from pointy Space Marines to their own demon engines. This kit builds 2 units, and unlike Jay's tanks, which are just a turret swap each, there are a bunch of different parts for the 2 different monsters, the shooting weapons and the punching limbs. I cut, cleaned, and assembled the parts that I could, but I can't do too much assembling because I need the magnets in before I can really get them put together. Eventually, I managed to get all the parts I'll need off the sprue, and putting it into a big old pile, it's a lot. And this is just one. I have a whole other one to build. Now that I have experience though, it wasn't too bad. The nice thing working on 2 at once is I learn on the first try, and then I know what I'm doing on the second one. I know I want one of these in my army, and the second one will probably make an appearance when I'm not bringing too many demon princes or any kind of snaky boy to a game. The weapons are the big difference between the Mauler Fiend and the Forge Fiend. The Forge Fiend gets 3 cannons, big plasma guns called ectoplasmic cannons, or some Hades autocannons. The Mauler Fiend has a bunch of close combat weapons instead. The fists, which are basically close combat las cannons, and the option between the lasher tendrils for a bunch of extra little punches, or the magma cutters, which are just melt-a-gun. The magma cutters are technically the better choice, but I think the lasher tendrils look way better. Even the head is different between the 2 units. The Forge Fiend has a cannon in its mouth, and the Mauler Fiend gets this monster head with razor-sharp teeth. With everything all cut out, I had 2 big piles. It feels like progress, and it's not a competition, but my piles are way bigger than Jay's. Whew, finished cutting out and scraping 2 whole Mauler / Forge Fiends. How are you doing?
I'm about a little more than halfway done. I had really high hopes that I would just fly through the Tau Rhino, but turns out these guys are from 2001, and they have some egregious mold lines and gaps, and it's taken some time to get them shipshape.
Mine was pretty good. I mean, it was made in the contemporary year of 2012, but everything went together really well. I'm not looking forward to magnetizing, and I'm really not looking forward to painting all this trim all over these bodies, but so far I'm coming out ahead.
I'm just working. With my tank hulls finally finished, I can start on the real star of the show, the weapons. The Hammerhead gets the anti-Titan weapon, the Railgun, a strength 20 AP-5 gun that is as long as 5 Space Marines. And of course, it also has an ugly gap running up the length of it. The other Hammerhead option, the Ion Cannon, is a kinda chunky, funky looking weapon. I don't know if I'm a big fan, but I still want the option. There's also this hatch that can open up with a spotter looking out the top. I love this detail, but looking at the head the kit comes with, I cannot use this. Looking around, I found this head from the Tau Pathfinder kill team, and it looks so much better. The other half of this box is the Skyray, the missile boat. This vehicle replaces the tank turret with Araka Seeker missiles that are adorable. And there's some really nice posability in the turret, with a pivot point so that you can get the missiles up in the air. With all these parts finished, my boats are getting really close. I would be worried how I'm going to transport these big old vehicles, but that won't be any problem at all with today's sponsor, the Magcase 2.0 from Tabletop Stronghold. Tabletop Stronghold is a one-man operation based out of the mountainous state of West Virginia, which I hear is almost heaven. And Mountains is appropriate for the absolute mountain of hobby goodies that Tabletop Strongholds makes. The Mag Case 2.0 is a durable dapper carrying case for holding and transporting your entire tabletop army. With a clear plastic front that lets you see your prized collection and slim metal trays and included 3x2mm magnets, you can securely transport your collection safely with the power of magnets. And with 24 available slots inside, you can pack your case for maximum efficiency. Tabletop Stronghold can do more than just transport your minis to and from the game though. With the Tabletop Stronghold Competitive Terrain Set 2.0, you can have a tournament level table set up in minutes. Crafted for Warhammer 40k with a balance of line of sight blocking, cover, fair layouts for tactical gameplay, and modular 1-inch, 2-inch, and 4-inch wall sections, all made of sturdy MDF board. In one afternoon of building, I now have an impeccable tournament regulation Warhammer 40k game board, so I can crunch practice games against Sean without ever needing to worry if he's cheating. The Tabletop Stronghold Competitive Terrain Set 2.0 is perfect. If you're looking to get a great case to transport your armies with the power of magnets or an entire table's worth of terrain, Tabletop Stronghold's got you covered. Use our code EONS25 to get 25% off. You can find them linked in the description below.
Jay looks like he's still building over there. I bet I can get one of these magnetized before he's even finished assembling. Some of these parts I can glue together, like the back legs. With all the optional arms and legs, the whole model needs to be balanced off these back legs. I glued these down and then looked at the arms. I used a Dremel to ground out the arm socket so I could stick in an 8x2mm magnet into the body. Then for the arms, I cut off the ball that is meant to go in there and shaved it flat. I need to get a magnet in here, and I don't have that much room, so I drilled a 5mm hole and stuck a 5mm by 2mm magnet into the shoulder. I used thick super glue, so I had a little bit of working time, and it seems to be holding on. This socket accepts the gun arms too, and for these I had a decision to make. For these arms, I cut off the ball joint and then sanded down the surface by 1mm, so I could glue on a 1mm by 8mm magnet. This will hold it to the body, but now there are two different guns meant to go on the ends of these arms. And that's a lot of magnets. Now that I'm feeling the time this takes, I don't think I'll ever take these Hades autocannons. If my army needs a lot of light infantry killing shots, something has gone horribly wrong. I just glued on the ectoplasma guns and called it done. Playing around with the two arms, I think it's coming along nicely. They both click into place with a satisfying clack.
I'm done with the build. Now, I think before I sink those magnets, one thing that's going to be a big deal is the pose, and I want to do the bases so I can get the pose exactly right on these little sky rays / hammerheads so that everything is exact. Looks like you got a guy standing over there.
I got one guy standing, then I have to do 2 weapon options for each side, and I have to do the entire other one. So,
easy.
It's going.
For the middle legs, I did these just like the upper ones, dremeling out the holes to accept more 2x8mm magnets, and then cleaning up the legs so I can glue 1mm by 8mm magnets flat on top of these. The flat magnets are nice, and they really help get through all these weapons like the lasher whips and the magma cutters. They're getting real close now. Lastly, I need to be able to swap between the shooty face and the bitey face. I clipped the peg pivot so it was flat and I could stick on another 8x2mm magnet. Then for the inside of the heads, there's nothing to glue, so I filled in the head hole with green stuff and shoved in some 5x2mm magnets. With the heads in place, these fiends are fully magnetized.
These Tau tanks float over the 60mm flying stand bases. I don't like these, they just don't work the way Games Workshop thinks they do. I rubbed up the surface with some sandpaper and then superglued down some thick cork. I tore this up with my fingers, making 2 little pyramids. Then I mixed up some milliput to smooth out the bottoms of the rocks into the ground. I took some wood putty and smeared this all over, using my fingers to wipe away the excess, leaving it behind in the recesses, and a damp paper towel took care of the rest. After it had a few minutes to dry, I put some sandy texture paste over the flat sections, and now I need to figure out how to make my boats fly. The Games Workshop flying stands are out of the question. These would snap off day one. Instead, I'm thinking some big old pieces of wood and dowel. I can take it from these disposable foam paintbrushes. I sanded the surface smooth and then cut them in half so I had 2 chunks. Then I drilled a 3mm hole up through the bottom so I can find the center. I used my Dremel tool to carve the hole big enough to accept my wood. Then I poured in some hot glue and I inserted my rod. I poured ultra-thin superglue into the gap and sprinkled on some baking soda to add some more strength. Then to get my boats attached, I think the best way will be with some screws. I drilled a hole a little further up than the Games Workshop one so I can get my screwdriver through the turret hole to tighten it. I'm going to be using a pair of washers to pinch the plastic, hopefully holding it tight forever. I tightened down the screw until it stopped turning, and for even more security, I dripped ultra-thin superglue over the hardware so I'll hopefully never have to worry about this again. My boats are now in the air.
They fly now?
They fly now. Look at these sleek, elegant skimmers compared to your spiky boys.
I think they're beautiful in their own way.
2 very opposite projects. You've got all of the magnetization done. I'm gonna steal his arm.
Hey, I'm this close now to getting onto painting. How about you?
I am very close to starting on magnetizing my ships, but look at them. Look at them. There is some hardware keeping these suckers in the air. I'm keeping this arm.
Oh, but I need that.
All the magnetized bits are working, just a few final things left. Each box only comes with one set of shoulder pads, and they need to work for both arms, so I need to get them floating in place. I poked a little hole in the middle of each one, and then I poked a hole in the same spot on the body. Then, I drilled these out and stuck in some 1mm brass rod. I put on some super glue and slid these into place. They're holding on nice and strong. A few more things can get glued on finally, like the back leg shoulder pads and the smokestacks. Finally, they're complete. 2 fiends totally built with all the options.
I'm gonna have a much easier time than Sean. For these turrets, I think I can hide some big magnets. The turret sits flush with the inside, so I dremeled the hole a little bit bigger so it doesn't pinch, and then I cut out some rectangles of plastic card. I glued my magnet on one side, and then for some added security, I globbed on more green stuff and super glue. I really don't want to ever have to mess with these again, so the putty will be a little bit of extra security. I put a second magnet on top so I could see where the magnet was underneath, and then I held it inside the ship so I could trace the hole to let me know where I can safely put super glue. I loaded it up and then squeezed it into place permanently. Now I can have a big strong magnet safely inside, and I did the exact same thing for the turret. Putting on a magnet and green stuff, then gluing my square of plastic to the rim, and then trimming it to size, hacking it with some clippers, and then sanding it to perfection. This is a really strong bond for both turrets. Next up, the hammerhead guns. This is tricky. They slot up into these pegs, and the inside of the weapons are hollow voids. Step 1 is getting the receiving magnets in place. I used 2 5mm by 3mm side by side, and I glued them to the wedge shape. Then I cover these in green stuff and resculpt the rectangle around so that the magnets are held securely in place. Now for the inside bits. I glued 2 more magnets side by side onto a playing card to help me be able to hold them a little easier, and this gave me a crazy idea. I cut it into the shape of a takeout box and I folded it into a little paper square. I think this'll work. I shoved in a bunch of green stuff into my contraption and then squished the guns down onto it with a lot of super glue, and then when it was in position, I yanked it off, and it worked. The magnets are inside the gun, floating right where they need to be. I whipped up 3 more of these for the other guns, and one by one squished them into position with plenty of green stuff. I don't know if this takeout box technique would be useful for anything other than these cannons, but it did get the job done. While those were drying, I glued the hinges to the Skyray's missile rack permanently, and now my boats are finished with all the trimmings. These boats have even more bits that I attached to some cardboard for sub-assemblies to hopefully make the painting easier.
I've been ready to paint. I have 2 Mauler fiends and I'm gonna do 2 different paint schemes. I'll do them one at a time. First, I'm going to paint one black with pink trim. To start off, I mixed gray and black to make dark gray, and I zenithalled the model. Then came the painstaking process of painting all the trim. We love Chaos trim. I used Diabolic Plum for most of it with some Impish Rogue on the high spots. And for the really high spots, I mixed fluorescent pink and ice yellow into the Impish Rogue to make a super bright pink that I used more sparingly. This took a while to find and paint every bit of trim, but eventually it was all done. Now to do the flesh metal, I took a light gray that had good coverage and I spread this on all of the flesh of the walker. This is the base coat for a wash. I mixed warrior skin with pallid bone 50-50 to make a flesh color, and I put this over my light gray. Once that was dry, I painted all the mechanical bits with silver paint, and I gave these spots a wash of noble skin speed paint. I was worried about painting the skin after the trim, but it wasn't too bad. Now for the final touches. I want something gold, another color I like to use on my Emperor's Children. I mixed bright gold with death metal and put this on the smokestacks. I airbrushed the whips with silver paint to make it easier on myself, and then washed them with the same noble skin speed paint. I was worried at first. I haven't painted many vehicles besides guard tanks, but I think this turned out great.
Sean looks like he's making some good time, but I know slow and steady wins the race. I finished priming all my bits. My army is Kroot and I have a specific way I like to start, with a base coat of fur brown and a zenithal of space dust. This makes all the lovely natural colors of my Kroot pop, but I think it's also a good step 1 for my Vior Latau as well. Once the base coats were on there, I took some white ink and I sprayed this over the hulls, pushing most spots up to white while leaving some of that yellow and brown in the recesses. Then I sprayed everything with a coat of satin varnish to protect these airbrush layers. Sutrivora is a white and red scheme, and I want a lot of red on these tanks. I used silly putty to mask off the nose of my ship, using the back of a paintbrush to scooch the putty right to the edges. I used some painter's tape to mask off the flat sections, then I sprayed some dark red over these areas, going hard in the recesses and leaving it light on the edges. Then I switched to a bright red ink to finish reddening these parts. Then I felt like they were a little bit too red, so I used some Tyrian navy and dusk red through the airbrush to dull down the red a little bit more. After these layers, I could demask and see how it turned out, and I feel like it worked like a charm. I was careful when I pulled off the putty so that I can reuse these blobs, taking them right off of number 1 and putting them back down on number 2. This did work and saved me some time. I sprayed a panel on each of the engines with a little bit more red. I'm really cooking with the airbrush, but it can't do it all. Eventually I did have to break out the brush and paint some parts manually. By hand, I used some dark red and light red and many layers of glazing in between to get some contrast as dynamic as I was able to do with the airbrush. For me and my boats, this is my trim. Doing this red took a painfully long time, but it's really looking good.
On the Forge Fiend versions of my demon engines, the ectoplasma guns need some glow. I sprayed some green through the airbrush, the same green I like to use on the drug tubes of all my Emperor's Children. Then I sprayed on some white ink, and then over that, a little neon green ink. It's kind of random that Emperor's Children can take Mauler Fiends, but not Forge Fiends, and I bet one day they'll get changed, but in the meantime, I need some Forge Fiends for a different reason.
Jay just stepped out of the room and I just finished my first Mauler Fiend. I'm excited to get this on the tabletop because it has strength 14 attacks on its fists, and it has a vehicle body, so it won't just die to a light breeze like every Marine in my army. And I think it looks pretty good. I also built it with the Forge Fiend bits, even though, strictly speaking, Emperor's Children can't take Forge Fiends yet, because, and don't tell Jay this because he's still chugging along with his crude over there, I've been done for so long that I decided I want to start a new army project, one that I've already got some boxes for, and this army could really use some Forge Fiends.
For my second demon engine, I'm going to do pink with gold trim. Starting off, I sprayed all the armor parts with Diabolic Plum, then the Impish Rogue in the center of each panel. Then to finish off, I mixed my fluorescent pink / Impish Rogue mixture and sprayed this on the highest spots. Now to once again paint all the trim, my favorite. I mixed bright gold and death metal together to get a darker gold color that covers over the pink pretty well, and eventually I had all the trim done again. Now for the flesh, I did the same trick of using a gray that covered over the black, and then gave these parts the same wash of pallid bone and goddess glow. Then I picked out the metal bits with some silver paint and a wash with noble skin.
While Sean was making some quick progress on his second vehicle, I was finishing up the red, and the next step is decals. These are the Alien Barcode decal sheets, fantastic for alien vehicles and available at EonsOfBattle.com. I cut out some letters using the red for over the white nose and some white text for over the red nose. Then I started splashing out some more decals everywhere I could, putting some barcodes over the doors, more letters over the turrets, some numbery thingies on the Skyrail spoiler, and some small text around the cockpits. With those decals applied, my boats are factory fresh, it's time to weather them. I took white paint onto a sponge and stamped this all over the red and white parts. I used a brush to connect some of these chips so that the corners and edges felt a little bit more naturally distressed. Now the red and the white is done, it's time to darken the metal. I mixed Grim Black and Tyrian Navy together into a cold dark black color, and I put this all over the metal, spilling it into the random machinery bits in the body, all over the air intakes, and over all the gun bits. This speed paint will do a ton of work for me, letting me get some easy contrast with one coat. With a lot of the big stuff done, I'm really starting to move fast. I hit the little mechanically doodads on the fuselage with some gold paint. Another color I like to use on my Sutravora Tau, and I hit these with the brown wash. After that, I hit my boats with another coat of satin varnish in preparation for some washing. Black panel liner. Nick bought this for himself, but I'll probably finish the bottle before he gets a chance to use it. I dripped this into all the cracks. Its low surface tension lets it flow through the panels of the armor. This was a very satisfying process, and because it doesn't react with the acrylic paint, once it was dry, I could wipe away any spills with a piece of sponge soaked in mineral spirits, leaving the paint only in the recesses. My boats are looking amazing.
I'm making some great progress too. I'm finishing up the Forge Fiend guns on the second demon engine, and I really like how the green was looking. So I decided to go all out on this one. Find all the spikes, and paint them with these colors, base coating them in green, and then highlights of neon green. The last little touch to finish my guys, 2 Mauler Fiends with the options to be assembled as Forge Fiends. I don't know which one I like better. Now that the painting is done, I need to figure out some bases. I need them pretty flat. These guys have a lot of feet that need something to stand on. I took some Cobalt Keep 120mm bases and I sanded the surfaces flat to get rid of the texture. My Emperor's Children are set in the ruins of a green marble temple, and I want to recreate this look on these bases. I used a Sharpie and a roller to make a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch grid. Then I used this chisel tool to gouge out some recesses into the base. This is the first layer. The real temple will come from the rubble. These bits are from the Invaded City Bits pack, the February terrain set for EonsOfBattle.com. If you like the look too, you can buy them physically from our website and I'll print them out for you. After I glued down some of these tiles, I sprinkled some sand over the bases and I put some small rocks over these piles to make rubble. Then I dripped ultra thin super glue over these spots to make them permanent. To make these bases more special, I took some Ruined Empire City bits so they match the Zabavka Workshop style Ruined Empire City base toppers that the rest of my army stands on. These can also be found on EonsOfBattle.com. I put these towards the front of the bases where I have some room, and then I piled up more sand and pebbles and more ultra thin super glue to lock it in place. The bases are done now, and to make the whole model stand off its back leg, it needs to be pinned. I drilled up into the legs and inserted some long 1mm brass rods. I'll attach them once I'm done painting these bases. I sprayed them with a black primer, and then I base coated the bases in Templegate teal. I also sprayed this color onto some extra sand. I'll use this as extra rubble later. Then I had Jay help me with the marble. We took wet wipes that were dry and tore them up so that paint could get through the fibers, and we sprayed some autumn sage through the wipes. We repeated this until the bases were about 25% of this color, and with the leftover paint in the airbrush, we sprayed this onto more sand. We saved the rest in a cup for later. Then we did a final layer of white paint onto the bases for the brightest streaks in the marble. Once that was done, I dry brushed the bases with Autumn Sage to highlight the edges, and it was time to attach my walkers. I stuck the pins through holes I drilled earlier, and then Jay folded the pins down flat and dripped some UV cure resin over them while I hit them with the light to attach them permanently. Now they're standing, but the feet are floating a little. I used the extra painted sand to pile under the feet, pouring more ultra thin super glue over these rocks so my walkers had some more stable footing. With my monsters now standing, I hit both the base rims with gloss black paint, and my vehicles are all done.
I'm all done.
Wow, 2 big old chunky vehicles. How many points are these guys?
They're 130 each.
130. That's really cheap. For toughness 10, how many wounds?
12.
That's kind of cheap.
What about you? How much have you got left?
I got to finish up these guns. I got to put them all together. I got some odds and ends, light bulbs and screens. Then I got to do the bases. Probably a couple more hours.
Well, I'm done, so I'm going home. I'm taking these with me too. I don't trust you with them.
I have a bunch more things to do, like the Tau Gunner and all these weapons. Starting off with the little guy, I have to invent what a normal Sutravora Tau looks like. I painted pallid bone over the clothing, doing some highlights with an off-white. Then I painted all the armor and equipment with a white paint. This took a couple of coats to get it good, but it's a small guy, so it didn't take too long. Then for the skin, my Tau recipe is Raging Sea base coat with Aqua Alchemy mixed with space dust for the highlights. This is the same recipe I used on my blue Kroot bodies. Coincidence or cannibalism? Who's to say? I picked out the face and hands with a few rounds of highlighting. I was having fun painting an actual character, so I got a little carried away. After picking out the eyes with space dust, I used some red paint to add some accents to the armor, painting around her headset and the symbol on her chest. I'm a big fan of painting infantry. And you know what else I'm a big fan of? That's right, our website. On EonsOfBattle.com, we have all kinds of hobby goodies, Grey Tide Studio bits to spice up your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, base and cork, and glue. We get ultra thin and ultra thick super glue. And we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we have ever made or the brand new one. New in February, we have created the Invaded City Bits pack. A series of thematic pieces to tell the story of an alien civilization awakening underneath an oblivious Gothic city. This pack features tile bits for filling in the flat sections of bases, and many obelisks and pyramids of varying sizes to show off the power of this alien architecture. There's also plenty of Gothic element to show the poor human settlement that is quickly being overtaken by implacable metal. And of course, no alien takeover would be complete without some critters to sprinkle some otherworldly flavor onto your bases. This terrain is available physically and is STL from EonsOfBattle.com. Now I can finally attach this guy. Don't tell anybody, but I cut off the hooves so that she stands a little bit lower in the hatch. Finally, something done. It's time to finish some other things. The Seeker missiles. I painted the head of each rocket with red paint, then I did some edge highlights and I used some black wash to panel line the recesses. Then I put a decal right over the red on every missile. A little tedious, but I think it was super worth it. Then for the exhausts, I want these to be very high-tech, so I used blue to do some object source lighting and a little spot of white on the back of each missile. With these painted up, I can glue them into place. I scratched the paint off the plastic in these spots so I can get a really strong bond, squishing these missiles into a healthy amount of thick superglue. And that is the Skyray Seeker missile arrays done. What do you think the alien language says on the missiles? Moving right along to these ion cannons. I don't love them, but hopefully I can save them with some paint. I used my black-blue speed paint mix for the inside techie bits, then I painted the balls in gold. I also painted this panel under the business end of the gun in gold too, and I dripped some black wash into all the recesses. I want the end of the gun to look heat damaged, so I took some darkwood speed paint and I sponged this over the barrel. Then I airbrushed the same color over it to soften it. Then I did another layer of sponging with grim black to make it look like the paint here was really cooked. Then I did a little sponging of silver and a dry brushing of silver to show the tip of the gun is really damaged. You know, with a little paint, these bits really came to life. And speaking of bits being done, finally everything is painted and can get assembled. It's painful to paint for so long and not see it all together. It feels like nothing is getting done until all at once I have 2 ships in front of me. It's so satisfying to see it all come together, but I'm not quite done yet. The last finishing touch, the lights and screens. I sprayed a little white paint over the drone's eyes to start some object source lighting, and I taped out the windscreen to get some glow on there as well. I airbrushed some Raging Sea speed paint over these spots, peeling off the tape, which left me with a nice cone of fake light. Then I painted some more speed paint over the glass, and I highlighted these with some swipes of light blue mixed with white. I sprayed the bases with a little more fur brown. They were pretty much the right color from my original base coats, and my 2 boats are done. Holy cow, that took a hot minute, and I'm really glad I put both of them together and painted them at the same time, because I don't want to do it again. And I'm really glad that I magnetized it so that I really don't have to do it again. I know, I'm the proud owner of 2 big old Tau tanks, and that's it for the Tau. I might do some broadsides later, but for right now, this is it for the Tau in my Kroot army. I'm really excited to see what it all looks like together. Look at all this Kroot! So many little Kroot. The hammerheads in the Viola colors are looking exceptional alongside my dusty Kroot. And speaking of these Kroot, I am at 1840 points. Just gotta add a couple of things. A couple of squad, a Kroot hounds, and some Vespid stingwings. And then with the enhancements that I intend to take, I will finally be at 2,000 points a Kroot.
Going into this, I was already at 2,000 points, basically. But now that I have these Mauler Forge Fiends, I'm well over with some options. And these boys are looking ready to beat up some tanks.
They're not gonna add Forge Fiends to Emperor's Children.
You never know. I mean, they need some shooty options.
I feel like on your side, this is a much smaller pile, but I feel like there's one miniature that's missing, like an Emperor's Children-y model that you don't have.
Well, they haven't released the new Defiler yet. So.
That is the one I was thinking of. Other than that, this is everything. This is the Codex.
Yep.
There's nothing left for Emperor's Children.
I can't think of anything. Actually, I guess there is one more thing I could do before the Defiler. But wherever am I going to find that?
There's no Kroot Primarch. There's no Kroot named character. Just a couple of pet dogs.